In 1799, a young boy named Caspar Hauser appeared out of nowhere in the streets of Nuremberg, Germany. He could barely speak, didn't know where he came from, and had no concept of the world around him. He had spent his entire life in isolation, a small, dark room with no human contact, no sounds, no sight of the outside world. The moment he stepped into society, everything overwhelmed him. People gave him objects, but he didn't know what they were. They showed him a mirror, but he didn't recognize himself. He didn't even understand that he was a person. And yet, in just a few months, Caspar Hauser became someone. He adopted a name, learned words, accepted history as if he had always been part of it. His mind filled in the blanks, constructing a past, an identity, a reality. Now think about yourself. You were born into this world, and from the moment your senses started working, you were told what everything was. You never questioned it, because how could you? Everything was handed to you. This is your name, this is your family, this is the world, this is real. But what if none of it was? Everything you experience, everything, only happens inside your mind. You think you're seeing the world as it is, but you're not. You're seeing your brain's best guess of what's out there. Look around you. What you see isn't reality. It's just light bouncing off objects, processed by your brain into shapes and colors. You don't hear actual sounds. You detect vibrations in the air, and your mind translates them into something you recognize. Even your sense of touch is just electrical signals traveling to your brain, convincing you that you're in contact with something solid. But here's the strange part. The world you experience isn't even happening right now. Your brain takes time to process reality, which means you're always living in the past, just milliseconds behind what's actually happening. Your mind fills in the blanks, predicting the present based on the past. Everything you see, feel, and think is already outdated by the time you become aware of it. And this is where things start to break down. If your entire reality is just a collection of interpretations, if you never actually experience the world in real time, how do you know what's real? Take dreams, for example. When you're inside a dream, it feels real. Your mind constructs a world, people, emotions, even time itself. You believe in it completely. It's only when you wake up that you realize it was an illusion. So what makes this moment any different? What if your waking life is just another dream, a long, consistent hallucination built by your mind to keep you functioning? Neuroscience has confirmed that your brain hallucinates your reality before you even perceive it. Studies show that your brain decides what you will do before you consciously make a decision. The thought you think you're having, your brain already made it happen before you even became aware of it. That means the you who believes they are in control is just a shadow of something deeper, an echo of decisions already made. Caspar Hauser built a reality for himself out of nothing because his mind demanded meaning, just like yours does. But if reality is just an illusion built for you, then who are you, really? And if none of this is real, what happens when you stop believing in it? The illusion of self. Who's really in control? In the late 19th century, a philosopher named Friedrich Nietzsche wrote something that disturbed many. There are no facts, only interpretations. He wasn't just talking about opinions, he was questioning the very nature of reality itself. And when you really think about it, he was right. You don't see reality, you see your mind's version of it. Right now, as you sit here reading this, you believe you are making a choice, that you are in control of your thoughts. But let's test that. Take a moment and try to stop thinking completely. No thoughts, no words, no images in your mind. See, you can't do it. Thoughts arise on their own, without your permission. You didn't ask for that random memory that just popped up. You didn't summon that thought about what you're going to eat later. It all just happens. So if you're not the one choosing your thoughts, then who is? This is where the illusion of self begins to crumble. Every single belief you have, every thought that arises, they're not yours. They are the result of conditioning, experiences, things you've been told since childhood. Your mind is like a sponge, absorbing everything around it and forming what you call you. But what happens if you strip that away? Imagine for a moment that you were born in a completely different time, in a completely different place, with completely different parents. Would you still be the same you that you are now? Of course not. That means your identity, your sense of self, isn't something fixed. It's just a construct, and constructs can be questioned. But here's where things get even stranger. Modern neuroscience has found that the self you think you are doesn't actually exist in your brain. There is no central control center, no core you running the show. Instead, your brain is made up of millions of competing processes, all working together to create the illusion of a unified self. Think of it like this. Imagine a crowd of people all shouting their own opinions. One voice speaks the loudest, and you assume that voice is you. But in the next moment, another voice takes over, and suddenly you're someone different, more confident, more anxious, more relaxed. This is why you can't control your own thoughts, because the you that thinks it's in control is just another thought. Now take this realization and apply it to everything you experience. Your emotions, they arise without your permission. Your desires, they appear out of nowhere. Your fears, you didn't choose them. So if you aren't the one in control, then what are you? This is the question that ancient spiritual traditions have been asking for thousands of years. The Buddhists call it anatta, the doctrine of no self. The Hindus call it maya, the illusion of the material world. Even modern science is beginning to confirm what mystics have known all along. The self is a story, a useful story, but a story nonetheless. And just like any story, it can be rewritten. The moment you stop identifying with the thoughts that appear in your mind, the moment you see them as passing clouds instead of absolute truths, something changes. You begin to realize that you were never the thinker. You were the awareness behind the thoughts all along. But what happens when you fully step into that awareness? What happens when you stop believing in the illusion entirely? The fabric of reality is thinner than you think. For centuries, people believed reality was a solid, fixed thing, something you could touch, measure, and define. But what if everything you experience is nothing more than a fragile projection? Science has already proven that your brain doesn't directly experience the world. It only interprets electrical signals. What you see isn't light hitting your eyes. It's your brain decoding those signals into an image. What you hear isn't actual sound. It's vibrations turned into electrical impulses. Your thoughts, emotions, and even your identity are just patterns of neural activity firing in response to these interpretations. Now, here's where it gets unsettling. If your entire reality is just an interpretation, then what's actually real? Think about a dream. Inside a dream, everything feels real. The people, the places, even the emotions. But when you wake up, you realize it was just a construction of your mind. What if waking life is just another layer of that? A dream that feels real simply because you haven't woken up from it yet. This is where the nature of perception gets eerie. Consider the famous hallucination experiments conducted by neuroscientists. By stimulating specific areas of the brain, they were able to make people see, hear, and feel things that weren't there. Yet to those people, those experiences felt just as real as waking life. If your brain can fabricate an entire reality from nothing, then how do you know it's not already doing that all the time? Think about the way your mind fills in gaps. When you look around, do you really see everything? Or does your mind create what it expects to be there? There's a reason eyewitness testimonies are often unreliable. Your brain doesn't record reality like a camera. It reconstructs it based on past experiences. And it gets weirder. Your past experiences shape what you see, hear, and even believe. The same event can happen to two people, but they will remember it completely differently based on their past conditioning. This means your mind isn't showing you an objective world. It's showing you a story filtered through your own conditioning. And what's worse, you don't even realize it. So here's the question. If your mind is constantly shaping, filtering, and constructing reality without you even noticing, then how can you be sure that anything is real? Because if everything you know is just a story your mind is telling itself, then what happens when you stop believing the story? You never actually see reality, only what your mind lets you see. There's a strange experiment that proves just how much of your reality is filtered before it even reaches you. In the 1990s, psychologists ran an experiment where they asked participants to count how many times a group of people passed a basketball. Halfway through the video, a person in a gorilla suit walked directly through the scene, paused, waved, and then left. After the video ended, the researchers asked the participants if they saw anything unusual. More than half of them never noticed the gorilla at all. How is that possible? Their eyes physically saw it. The light entered their retinas. The information was there, but their brains deleted it because it wasn't part of what they were focusing on. And that's just a small-scale example of how your mind actively hides things from you every second of the day. Now take this same concept and expand it. What if your entire understanding of life is just a carefully filtered illusion? Think about it. Right now, your mind is shaping every single thing you perceive. Your beliefs, your opinions, your sense of self. It's like wearing invisible glasses that only allow certain information to pass through while blocking out everything else. A simple example? Language. If you only speak one language, you're trapped inside the mental framework of that language. There are concepts in other languages that don't even exist in yours. Ideas you literally cannot think about because your mind has no way to process them. The same thing happens with perception itself. Ancient cultures believed the world was filled with spirits and unseen forces. To them, those things were as real as the air we breathe. But today, our modern scientific worldview filters those possibilities out before they even enter our awareness, which raises a disturbing thought. How much of reality do we fail to see simply because we've been conditioned to ignore it? This is why people who go through profound awakenings or deep psychedelic experiences often come back and say, "I can't unsee what I saw." Because for a brief moment, they slipped outside the invisible filters of their own mind. If you want proof that this is happening to you right now, ask yourself, have you ever had an argument with someone where they saw the situation completely differently than you did? Have you ever remembered something one way only to find out later that it happened completely differently? Have you ever believed something without question, only to wake up years later and wonder how you ever thought that way? That's the illusion in action. It's not that reality is fake, it's that you are only seeing a tiny fraction of it, and you don't even realize what's being left out. And the scariest part, your brain isn't just filtering out random things, it's filtering out whatever doesn't align with the story it already believes. Which means you aren't seeing what's real, you're seeing what you expect to be real, and that changes everything. Your mind is a storytelling machine. Every second of your life, your brain is constructing a story, a narrative so seamless that you don't even question it. But here's where it gets interesting. That story isn't just telling you what's happening, it's deciding what's real and what isn't. Think about dreams. When you're dreaming, no matter how strange things get, floating through the sky, talking to someone who passed away years ago, suddenly being in a place you've never seen, your mind accepts it as normal. It fills in the gaps so convincingly that you don't even question it until you wake up. But what if waking life is just another level of that illusion? There's a psychological concept called confabulation. It's what happens when people confidently recall memories that never actually happened. In studies, scientists have shown that our brains often make up details that feel completely real. For example, if you're shown a group of words like bed, pillow, blanket, snore, and later asked to recall them, most people will swear they saw the word sleep in the list, even though it was never there. Your brain doesn't lie to you on purpose. It's just designed to prioritize coherence over truth. This is why two people can live the same event and remember completely different things. Their minds filled in the blanks differently, filtering reality through their personal biases, emotions, and past experiences. Now, apply this to your entire life. The person you believe yourself to be, the story you've constructed about your past, your identity, your values, isn't just a reflection of reality. It's a carefully edited version of it. Everything you've been through, every success, every failure, every belief you hold, your mind didn't just record those things. It shaped them into a narrative. And what happens when something doesn't fit the story? It gets ignored, rewritten, or twisted to fit. This is why when people experience something that contradicts their worldview, whether it's a religious revelation, a sudden loss, or even just hearing a perspective they've never considered before, it can feel deeply unsettling. Because it's not just new information, it's a crack in the illusion. And the deeper you look, the more you start to see that nothing you believe is as solid as it seems. What if your opinions, your habits, even your likes and dislikes aren't actually yours, but just the results of a story that's been constructed for you? This isn't just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Brain scans have shown that when people make a decision, their brain actually decides before they're consciously aware of it. Meaning, by the time you think you're making a choice, your brain has already chosen. Which means, if you aren't controlling your thoughts, who is? The moment you see it, everything changes. Once you start noticing how your mind constructs reality, how it fills in gaps, rewrites memories, and creates a seamless illusion, you can't unsee it. You begin to question, what else have I accepted without realizing? And that's when something shifts. You stop reacting automatically. You stop blindly following the script your mind has been playing on repeat. Instead, you become the observer, watching the illusion instead of being trapped in it. And that changes everything. If this opened your mind in any way, you'll want to see the next video on your screen right now. It takes this even deeper. Click it now before the illusion pulls you back in.